All right. Well, hello, guys. So, welcome to the first episode of Social Justice from 6 Feet Apart. That's the name of our program. So, this is our weekly web series. We are trying to help folks stay connected, even though we can't be together on campus. You guys know me. My name's Kelsey. And a fun fact about me that you're not really going to witness later because it's not going to be that exciting, but I can play the ukulele a little bit. And I have it here with me in studio.
It's going to be wonderful.
It's going to be great.
And hi, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Dan, pronouncing him his. Kelsey and I both work in student services, and we wanted to kind of have a way to keep engaging with all of y'all and also still be able to kind of carry on a lot of those really good conversations that both of us would have either together with other students or one-on-one with some students in our offices. So we love talking about social justice and kind of just having those conversations and kind of educating each other. So that's why we kind of wanted to start doing this and moving this way. And we're also going to be recording each episode as well. So if you can't watch it live, then we can put it somewhere else for you to watch afterwards.
Yeah. All right. So we're so happy to have a few people watching with us today. And we're just going to get into the activities, and we hope you guys are doing okay at home or wherever you are with your online classes and finding ways to still be connected with people. So, on to our show.
So this week, what me and Kelsey thought would be a good starting point to talk about in this little series is to be talking about identity. Ooh, look at all these props we have.
So many props. Dan, I love talking about identities, different people's identities, but what does that have to do with social justice?
Yeah, of course. So with social justice, privilege and oppression really ties a lot into different identities, and knowing your own identities can really help understand yourself, and not only yourself, but others, and how people may perceive you or interpret you. Sadly, we do kind of have some of those social constructs still tied to identities, but even just being aware and knowledgeable about those can really help start those conversations and help lead them in positive ways too.
Awesome. So we want to start today with a little bit of audience participation. So we are going to create a word cloud together. So you're going to see in just a second up on the screen some instructions for how to participate in this word cloud. So if you look up at the top, I'll make it full screen for you. If you look up at the top, you can text. It's a little long. Sorry, it's a little annoying. But if you text this Kelsey, part of my last name, 540 to 37607 wants to join the word cloud, and then text your message. We want to know, what do you think about when you hear the word identity? What comes to mind? And any answers that people text in are going to show up on the screen there, and we'll get to see what people think and then talk about it for a second. So we'll give everybody, I'm going to get into this myself now here. We'll give everybody just a few seconds to send some answers.
Your cat.
Cat just jumped up on my lap. Yes. He'll join us later.
Yeah, and for this activity too, you can always do this by thinking of some of your own identities that you hold, other identities that you're aware of, or really any other words or phrases that tie into identity and what makes you think of that. So kind of let that mull over in your brain as you're texting Kelsey Alexander 540.
You can also do it from this website if that's easier.
Ooh,
You can
that
just go
is
to that
easier. I can
website
do
at the
that
top.
one. I
Yeah.
am cell phoneless at the moment.
I know, Dan. What has that been like for you, having a broken
That
cell phone in this time?
it has actually been kind of nice. It's been a little stressful, like not being able to get in touch with people and just like stay as connected as I'm used to. But it has
Mm-hmm.
been kind of nice to just like unplug and disconnect for a little bit. You kind of just like focus on work, and then kind of just focus on after work, like reading a book outside, taking my dog for a walk since I'm at home. So it's been kind of
Nice.
nice to like unplug. Ooh, we have an answer.
We do. See if we get any more.
So it looks like we have race up there right now, which is definitely an identity. Well, a factor into so many different things when we talk about social justice, but that's definitely an identity that one can hold.
Yeah. And it makes sense to me that for some folks that might be the most like prevalent identity that comes to mind. Because well, I guess it depends on sort of who you spend your time with, or for students like what classes you're taking. I think in some communities, people probably don't talk about race like at all. And then I think in other communities, people, especially folks who are interested in talking about things like social justice or privilege and oppression, probably talk about, race. I think is like the number one category of identity that sort of comes to mind. But there's also so many other kinds of identities, which we're going to get to in just a minute, to look at like some other ways that people might identify, or just different categories that people have probably going on.
Absolutely.
Anything else you want to say about this one, Dan?
I don't think so. We'll touch upon race kind of as we move forward, and kind of just a touch point to begin with, and we'll probably have more conversations, maybe leaning more towards race in the future. But for our identity poll everywhere, I don't think so.
All right. Okay. So we are going to share, we're going to move on to this next image here and share this, guys, with you too. Folks who are watching this very first episode here, we are figuring out, at least on my end, I feel like I'm figuring out all the technology stuff kind of as we go. So you're really getting the behind the scenes look
at. You're doing great, Kelsey.
Yeah, Aruba, you could probably teach me something with all of your videos that you make and streaming and stuff that you do. So I'll have to consult with you next time. Exactly. All right, Dan, do you want to tell us about what we're looking at here?
Yeah, I would love to. So this right in front of us that Kelsey is displaying is an identity wheel. And this is a tool that's used in some educational settings and that we thought that we could kind of utilize here on what me and Kelsey are doing, because it's a tool that kind of encourages people to reflect upon their identities and different people's identities as well. So this tool and we'll be walking through it in just a minute, but this one really helps us kind of reflect upon our own identities and really start to kind of break apart identity and figure out what that means to us individually and to other people as well. It also helps us understand how identities can become more or less visible in certain scenarios or in certain places. And then it helps us understand each other's viewpoints as well about identities. So this is a really great tool. Me and Kelsey are going to kind of walk through. But it's also great to have if you have questions about your own identity. Maybe this is a way for you to reflect upon that. Or if you're looking for something to kind of have a conversation or like host a program or do anything identity focused or identity based, this is a great tool to utilize.
Yeah. And Dan, you first saw this when you were in college, right?
Yes, I did. So I went on 2 alternative spring break trips when I was in undergrad in college, and I loved both of them. And a lot of them are really social justice focused, so that we were understanding the community service that we were doing. And it kind of focused a lot about race, identity, gender equality. And then we also talked about kind of just socioeconomic status and living wages. And we kind of all tied it into a social justice curriculum that we did. So this is where I first saw this wheel. And when I first started college, when I was a freshman, I grew up like in an all-white town, and I didn't really know too much about race or identities or anything like that. And becoming a part of groups on campus, and doing identity wheels like this and other social justice programming really helped me understand like my identities and how I can help others learn that. So this was a really useful tool for me to use when I first started learning about this stuff.
Cool. I like this because I think people's experiences of their own identities, there's so much to talk about there, right? Like, yeah, certain things that are important to some people, not important to other people, things that we just don't know about the people we go to school with, or even the people in our friend groups, or even people in our family. And it's just nice to be reminded, again, sort of back to what we were saying before about how I think when we think of the word identity, there's like a few specific categories that come to mind. It's nice to be reminded that there's all of these other things, and there's probably even more things than are on this wheel. For example, Dan and I were joking earlier that, like what Harry Potter house you would be in is not on this wheel. And I personally really strongly identify as a Hufflepuff. So if I was going to make my own wheel here, I'd probably add a little square for that. It's interesting to think about stuff like I don't think about age all that often. Like, do I really strongly identify as being like a person who is 30 years old? Like, do I feel like that affects how I see myself or the way that I am in the world? And I'm sure in some situations it does. Or as being like like I'm technically a millennial, like as being a millennial, like a big part of my identity.
Yeah.
I don't know. But it's cool to think about.
Yeah, there's really, this also helps kind of, like you said earlier, kind of open your mind about identity in general and how to kind of get away from just some of those like easy, like button pushing, like, ooh, this is what identity means. And it kind of helps you go deeper into that and start understanding more. Because I know at first when I was reading this, I can't see it fully because I like have it a little minimized on my screen, but I think one of them is able-bodied, if I remember correctly. Yeah, and I know for me that was something when I first did my first identity wheel. I never thought about how I was able-bodied and how that was an identity, because I had that privilege of always being able-bodied and being able to do things with my body that I needed to. But I never really thought of that as like, ooh, I identify as able-bodied.
Yeah.
But that also comes with some privilege there too.
Totally. Yeah, it's a great tool for sort of better understanding your own privilege. I think my guess is that for folks who, like, for example, somebody who has a disability, if they have a disability, that's probably something that they have talked about or like have thought about, or other people have asked them about, or it's been a part of experience or whatever. So it's like, I think the categories on here where maybe we experience a little bit less privilege, we're probably really familiar with what those identities are. And then the categories where we're in a position of having privilege, because we fall into like the dominant group. So the example you just gave of like being able-bodied, I think that those are the ones we don't think about that much,
Exactly.
Yeah. So we're going to put up a question. We have a few questions. They come from some of the questions that are in the middle of the wheel here, but we will switch over to our window where we're asking, you guys can answer some questions. I'm going to move to the next one. So that was our word cloud. Next one is just a multiple choice question. So you use it basically the same way. And you're going to text. So same thing we did before. You're going to text this if you're not still in the, I don't know if you have to do it again or if you will experiment with this, I guess. Or if you can just go with the same screen if you answered on the last one. But the question is, what identity category feels most meaningful to who you are? And there might be more than one on here, but try to go for one of the ones that feels most true to who you are. And again, you could do it on the web. You could use the website link that's up at the top here.
Yeah, and this is also a really great way to start thinking about identities and what they mean to you. And then from after this kind of webinar web series thing that me and Kelsey are doing today, after this, you can kind of move forward and start thinking about some other identities that you might not think about, or kind of dive in deep and figure out why some of those matter more to you than others. And it kind of helps you also start to align with some values I've found personally as well.
Cool. I don't know if you guys can hear my cat purring. He's been sitting in my lap for like the last 5 minutes, and he's a very loud purrer.
He just loves love, you know?
He does. He's thrilled about this whole working from home situation. He is having the time of his life. All right, we'll leave that up for like 10 more seconds. So we're hoping in future, like the episode that we record next week, obviously it would be lovely if we had a handful of people on, because then when we do these participatory activities, we get a bunch of responses and we can talk about them and hopefully engage some people in the comments to ask questions, answer questions, do stuff like that. But we're also just happy to have this be a recording that folks could go back and watch afterwards. And if anybody does watch this afterwards and has feedback for us about what you'd like to see in a future episode, whether that's a topic that you want us to talk about or a type of activity or a game or segment, then Dan and we're very happy to try anything, because neither of us has ever done this before.
Absolutely.
If that's not obvious.
And Kelsey, I also feel like that is also a good caveat for us to kind of share with everyone too, that this is a learning lesson for all of us.
Yes.
That me and Kelsey, like, yes, we love to talk about social justice, and these are topics that we find interesting, but we are in no way experts in them, or at least me personally, I don't consider myself an expert. So we try and learn and grow together, and that's why we wanted to have a series like this with these conversations, so we can all kind of learn and grow. And we might make mistakes, and we'll try and make sure to clarify those or fix those as much as possible. But we just wanted to share that this is also just an open learning environment for all of us as well. So no answer is a wrong answer as long as you're well-intentioned.
Yeah. All right. So why don't we can so we have one answer on our screen here, which is for gender. And again, that makes sense to me. I think, like, especially if you think about sort of the things you know about yourself from a really young age, whether that's because you know them like internally, like you can feel like, oh, this is who I am and this is what feels true to me, or whether it's because this is what the world outside is telling you are over and over again. I think gender is one of those ones that, like, we love to, with little kids, like, divide them up by boys and girls, or, you know, we have all these ideas about what little boys are like or little girls are like, and the kinds of things that the kinds of games they like to play, the kind of clothes they like to wear. And so it makes sense to me that for some people, like, gender as an identity might feel like something that is really present in your life, because it's just one of those things that we, like, talk about a lot as a society. And I think we're getting a little bit more, people are developing, like, more knowledge around different gender identities, and with little kids, like, I hope giving them a little more freedom to be the person that they really are. I always think about I have these really awesome friends who have some kids, and their son is probably like 7 now. And I don't know if he still does this because I haven't seen them in a while, but when he was in, like, preschool, kindergarten, he really loved wearing dresses and headbands and stuff like that. And he had an older sister, so he had some, sorry, my cat's tail is, like, showing up in the video. He's standing behind my laptop screen. And yeah, so anyway, he liked to wear clothing that I think we don't traditionally associate with young boys. And his parents were like, great, if that's what he wants to wear, then he should wear it. And he went to school in that clothing, and even his classmates, it was like no big deal. So I hope that things are changing a little bit for little kids, but I know it hasn't always been great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also feel like some of the identities that we've talked about too, like race and gender, like you said, those are the ones that are talked about in a lot of different circles socially, but also sometimes those are the ones that are easiest for us to visualize and see out in the real world. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, while making assumptions is not always the best thing to do about people, sometimes with race and gender, it's easy for your mind as soon as you see someone to categorize them, be like, ooh, I know X and Y about someone. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's partially just the way that we've been raised, is to kind of just immediately identify people. But
Mm-hmm.
that's why it's important to talk about these identities, because, like Kelsey said, gender, there's so much that goes into it, and there's so many gender stereotypes that happen. But then there's also our preconceived notions about identity and gender, and kind of how we can start picking those apart so that we can be more open-minded for these things.
Yeah. And that's a good point, Dan, to think about the kinds of identities that seem obvious just from looking at someone, versus identities that we would never know about somebody based on their outward appearance. And obviously, people get stuff wrong about people all the time, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like I've heard stories of students, some at Alberta, some other students I know, from a job where I used to work with high schoolers, who would talk about like people making assumptions about their race all the time, and just getting it totally wrong. I think we make assumptions about people's gender identities, and we don't always really know the answer there. But then there's stuff like class or how much money your family has, that's probably really difficult to tell just from somebody's outward appearance, or someone's religion, or whether they have a disability or not. Like, there's so many things that we would never know unless somebody told us. Yeah, that's interesting to think about. All right. Dan, is there anything else you want to say about identity before we go to our last segment here?
Not that I can think of. I just love always talking about identity and just like kind of sharing with other people, like what when you're in a safe space and you're with people that you can trust and you feel comfortable sharing with, like kind of just talking about which identities matter to people and which ones are more important to others and things like that. So I just think this is a great kind of topic, even now maybe as you're quarantined with your family or with some friends, or you want to hop on a call. Identity is a great way to kind of start having some of these conversations. And we're so happy that y'all kind of joined us and that you're bearing with us as we do some of our technical things that we're working through and learning as we go. But this is something me and Kelsey were really excited for. So hopefully you all enjoyed that little bit that we had.
Yeah. And we're so excited once this whole quarantine, work from home, classes online situation is over, and we're all, most of us, like back together in the fall, we'll get to talk about all this stuff in person. We
It'll
love
be
that
even
even
better
more.
then.
Yeah. All right. So our final segment for our web series episode is, this is something that I took from a podcast that I really love. The podcast is called Code Switch, which appropriately for our topic this week is a podcast that's all about race and identity. The hosts are awesome. They put out an episode every week, so I would definitely recommend that if you like thinking about race. But they have a segment on their show they do sometimes called Music Giving Us Life. And I sort of assume that lots of students who might be watching this might be spending a lot of time like on your phone or on your computer, maybe trying to get work done. I don't know how many of you like to listen to music when you're working, but I do. So I figure that maybe Dan and I could give you some music recommendations. And the theory or the idea is that we were going to bring them to you via our pets, because we are home and people don't, the likelihood that somebody would ever come to my home and get to see my cat is probably not that high, or get to go to Dan's home and meet his dog. Even less likely because he's in Massachusetts. So my cat is here, and his name is Morris, and here he is. And he is 4 years old. And he's really annoying, but I really love him. He kind of lets you do whatever you want to him, which is nice, and he can be very affectionate when he wants to be, and then other times I don't think he really cares that there's any humans in his house. So the music recommendation I wanted to bring to you this week, I was trying to think about what music have I really been listening to a lot lately, and I love this artist named Phoebe Bridgers. She has one full-length album out, which I actually don't think I know the name of. I'm going to look it up while I'm talking to you. But she has a song, Motion Sickness, that is pretty popular that I really love. Yeah, and I've been listening to her album a lot lately as I've been sitting at this desk in my apartment, just getting some work done. So Phoebe Bridgers, look her up.
So my dog, Lily, she is an 11-year-old beautiful woman. I love her. She's a beautiful puppy. She's downstairs because it's raining up in Massachusetts and she got very muddy outside, so she was not allowed on the first floor. So she's in the basement right now. She dries off and we tried cleaning her, but still too messy to come upstairs. So you'll see her next week. But my music recommendation is American Oxygen by the Ex Ambassadors. And I did not know this at first because it came up on my Spotify and I added it to a playlist a few months ago. But the Ex Ambassadors wrote the song for Rihanna. And so Rihanna put that song out in 2015, which I watched the music video today because I was like, oh, I didn't know Rihanna did a song like this too. And I was like, wait, it's the same song. So the Ex Ambassadors covered it because they wrote it for Rihanna, but they covered it and put it on Spotify. And that's how I found it originally. So whenever I listen to it, it kind of just makes me both happy and like just like reflective a little bit. It's a little slower, the Ex Ambassador version, and it's just kind of nice and helps me unplug. And I listen to that while I'm like doing dishes or while I'm getting ready to go read. And it's been just like a song that I can have on in the background as I do things and kind of just like mellows me out. So, American Oxygen.
All right, I'll have to go listen to that when we're done here.
It's a good one. I like it.
Yeah, and anybody who's writing music for Rihanna must be great.
Right?
So, yeah.
2020, we need more Rihanna music.
Speaking of Rihanna, too, she is doing some awesome stuff in the coronavirus epidemic here. She donated a bunch of money so she's from Barbados, right? So she donated a bunch of money to buy a bunch of ventilators for Barbados. I saw something on Instagram. There's like 3 or 4 amazing things that she's done with her money to try to help keep people safe and healthy and help people get through this. So Rihanna.
We love her.
Gotta love her. Yeah.
Maybe
all right.
She's our mascot for this then, Kelsey?
Oh my gosh, maybe she
Rihanna,
is.
our mascot?
Okay, we'll find a way to integrate more Rihanna into these weekly episodes. I love it. She would be thrilled with what we're doing here, I think. I don't
Our
know.
first segment series can be Oh Na Na, What's My Name? And then we introduce ourselves at the top.
Perfect.
Sorry, that was a bad
Perfect. I love it. Students, if you think this is a terrible idea, you got to get on here and tell us because we're just going to run with it.
And if no one stops us, it's just going to keep happening. So please.
Yep. More and more Rihanna. All right, folks. So please tune in. Next week the plan was we were going to do these on Thursdays at 3:00. Next week is actually Easter week, which means Thursdays we're not going to be working, and I'm assuming that folks don't have class. So you might, everything Albertus might be just out of your brain. So I think next week we will do Wednesday at 3:00 instead of Thursday. So that's when our next episode will be. You can subscribe on the YouTube channel that you found this on. Dan, do you want to talk about what we're doing on Friday, tomorrow at 3 p.m.?
Of course. So one thing that Student Services is doing is we are still trying to check in with people as much as possible. So what we started last week, we did like a test round, and this week we're starting it fully. We're going to be doing Friday check-ins with people. So if there are any students that kind of want to come by and just like stop by and say hi to us, talk to us, there'll be a few different members of Student Services in there. Every single Friday we'll try and rotate so you can see as much of us as possible. But we're also going to be partnering with other departments and divisions throughout the next upcoming Fridays and days that we do this so that we can really check in with you, help you if there's anything you need help with, but then also just kind of be able to be in the same space together again. So we will be doing that. Our next one is Friday, this upcoming Friday tomorrow at 3 p.m. And if you're interested in that, you can shoot me an email to my Albertus email, dhurley@albertus.edu, and I will be sending you the link so you can come chat and say hi to us.
Yeah. And tell your friends to watch our Social Justice from 6 Feet Apart episodes. The other event coming up in a few weeks is Take Back the Night, which is a protest, vigil, rally kind of event. We're doing it online, obviously, to support survivors of sexual assault. So that's happening on April 27th at 7 p.m. And you can RSVP to me or really to anybody you know in student services to just let them know that you would like to attend. And then we just have to send you the link to get into the video chat for that. And yeah, we will see you guys next week. Have a good week, everybody.
Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah.